Election day turns into election month. Pauline Hanson takes a swing at the Great Reset, and Scott Morrison considers a travel bubble with China. That's right. This is The Arc with Riccardo Bosi. Riccardo, welcome to the show again.
Thanks, Joel. Good to be here as usual.
I keep welcoming you, but it's a usual thing. I'm sorry. It's just I run the Thin Ice as well podcast, and I'm just used to welcoming new guests every time. But this has been a crazy week. I say it every week because it is 2020. And to make matters worse, the day we're recording this is Friday the 13th. So there you go. I'm suspecting something weird's going to happen in the US, especially with what's going on with their US elections. But we'll see what happens. But how's your week been?
Busy, very good, very productive. We're doing Zoom meetings every night with supporters. Last week was Victoria, this week was WA, next week we're moving state by state by state. 2 hours each night, a half-hour intro, and then I take questions until they run out of questions, and by the end of it they're full bottle.
Yeah,
and they're keen to get to work. So extremely gratifying. The A1 family, we attract the best and brightest, and I mean that. And as I said before, they range between early 20s to mid 80s. And by the end of it, they've got a twinkle back in their eye, they've got a spring in their step, and they just can't wait to get going.
Yeah.
And it's very, very exciting. We're going to have a very good next 12 months. Huge.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm looking forward to seeing how this bears fruit in the coming months. The people we meet, because they're really talented, and it's the people that really drive these things. So, before I get into the US election, guys, you will notice that I am looking especially Arab this week. It's because it's Movember, and mental health, as you've heard me talk about it in the past, is a very important thing to me and to many people my age. Gen Z, according to the research of Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the Coddling of the American Mind, excellent book. He found there's a correlation between when the like button was introduced on Facebook and the mental health declines of Gen Z and millennials. It's really bad. So it shows that there's been problems with suicide rates increasing, anxiety rates increasing, depression rates increasing, all because of social media and what the impact it's having on us. And I don't think we fully understand that yet. So when I left school in 2015, within about 6 months, I had 3 friends try to commit suicide, and one of them unfortunately succeeded. His name's Stuart Kelly. He's the brother of Thomas Kelly. So November does hold a very important place in my heart. I've helped a lot of these guys and a lot of young people even today with mental health issues, and it's very important that we recognize mental health not just in guys but also in girls of a young age, and the impact that social media has on it. So guys, if you can donate to Movember, go ahead, grow it out, guys, and keep going. And it's important to talk. I'm not telling you to live stream your feelings on camera, but it is important to look out for your friends, your family, because often you might be the only person looking out for it. But let's get into the episode. I want to get this massive elephant out of the way, the US election. We had a chat last week about the debacle that it was. When I was setting up the show, I was frantically looking at the latest information. Riccardo was very patient with me. And we were looking at which states Trump was contesting, which states there was fraud, and which states had gone either way. Right now, you guys are looking at this graph of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Now, this is from Google. They haven't updated it. But as it stands, Donald Trump is on about 217 electoral college votes, and Joe Biden is on about 230 electoral college votes. I say about because they can't make up their minds whether they want to call North Carolina and Alaska yet for Trump. And with Joe Biden, they prematurely called a bunch of states as well. Just to run through this very briefly, because there are some phenomenal people that you guys should be following who are way better to listen to on this. Charlie Kirk, he does a 2-hour podcast every day on this. He's excellent. He's at the forefront of this analysis. There are 6 states that Donald Trump is challenging at the moment for various different reasons. Voter fraud, voter irregularities, poll watchers from the Republican side not being allowed to observe these polls. These states include Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. What's that one? That is interesting one. GA, that is
Georgia.
And then we've got Pennsylvania. I can't believe I forgot Georgia. They've been talking about it all week. Georgia is having a recount. They're having a whole by-hand recount. And Pennsylvania, they've got some, I think they're going to have some, like go through a full audit as well, which was just announced this week. That will be very, very interesting. I do want to preface this discussion by saying that, guys, there are multiple ways that Trump can pull this off still. There are multiple ways. If you want to look at Vox, they wrote an article recently about the 3 different ways Trump could actually win this still. So there is a path to victory for Trump. It is a very slim one. It is very slim. And I don't want to get your hopes up because of how slim it is. But I don't want my progressive viewers, and there are a few, believe it or not, to think that there's no way Trump could win and it's a coup. There is a path to victory. Vox is a progressive site, and there is a very good chance that Trump might still win this. One of the ways he can do that is by delaying a lot of these votes in the states by getting them tangled up with these lawsuits. Not a very ethical way, but if these votes that have been cast haven't been done in a legitimate way, then Trump can actually delay this till December 14th, when the electors all meet for the Electoral College and they cast their votes. For those of you that don't know, everyone's been watching, you need to reach 270 Electoral College votes. Each state gets a certain amount of votes. You know, California, for example, has 55 because there's like 35 million people that live there. And the Electoral College haven't actually allocated these votes yet, even though the media say that Biden's won. He's the projected winner. He is, the projected, commander-in-chief for January 20th, when Inauguration Day happens. But it's actually not. No one's actually received an Electoral College vote yet, not until December 14th. So if Donald Trump manages to delay this past December 14th, one of the things that could happen is the electors in these states, a lot of which have been elected as Republicans, a lot of them may actually vote for Donald Trump. And so that's one path. If that were to happen, there would be riots. It's unlikely. Another path is Trump can manage to get, in Pennsylvania, that's a good example. There's 20 Electoral College votes. It's quite a lot. It's the most out of the ones that are being contested right now as a swing state. There are some very valid points from the Trump campaign and his lawyers, some of which include 400,000 ballots or more these were mail-in ballots that were cast 3 days after the election actually happened. They actually arrived late, and the Supreme Court sort of has to work out, do we count these or not? And on top of that, I don't want to go into the specifics there, guys. I mean, there's way better people to listen to, like Tim Pool or Charlie Kirk. But in essence, there's not just that. There's not just whether they should be counted, because the Supreme Court, said that they may or may not be required to be counted. But ballots there were also treated differently. The Republicans weren't allowed to observe these counts, and that is completely against what a judge over there said. So a lot of the poll watchers there weren't allowed in, which is completely against what was commanded by a court. So there is a serious case there, guys. They were checking and they were correcting. They were correcting, Riccardo, some of these ballots that were Democrats, but not ballots that were from Republican precincts. So they've violated the 14th Amendment, which means you need to treat all the votes equally. It's not good, guys, because either way, what happens, I am not looking forward to seeing the result, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens. On top of that, so what could happen is those ballots could be disregarded, or the whole place could be called for a re-election. I don't think we got time. Or the whole of the state's votes get invalidated. So that means that's 20 electoral votes no one's getting.
Right.
So if no one reaches, if this happens to enough states, because Trump's suing 6 of these states, if something like that happens to enough of these states, or a combination of things get delayed, they don't have, Pennsylvania doesn't finish their audit, or Georgia doesn't finish their recount. If enough of these things fall, I think Trump needs at least 3 of these states, and if enough of them get compromised and neither candidate, Joe Biden or Trump, gets to 270, it goes to the electors for each state. They will cast their votes. Each state gets 1 elector, and there are more Republican states than Democrat states. So what might end up happening is Trump wins based on that. There would also be riots. So it's not looking great, guys, for either side. It's a very slim. I mean, if Donald Trump pulled this off in Pennsylvania, it would be a miracle. He has to pull that off in 3 states. So he's going to need some of that Trump luck. Like, of all the times, now is the time. What do you think, Rick?
I think he's going to win.
Okay.
I think he's going to win the court cases, and not just win the court cases. He's going to demonstrate the utter corruption of the entire system. There is no way that a man that barely turned up received more votes in American history than anybody else, because that's the line. Biden had received more votes than anyone in American history, and Trump number 2 at this election.
Trump got 10 million more votes. It stinks.
You don't
it does. It does.
This is complete nonsense. It really is. Trump's going to win. He's going to win the court cases. He will be the next president, and the left are ready for this and anticipate violence, and even on Inauguration Day, expect something to happen. Because once again, these people don't play fair. We know that. There are a bunch of Trump voters in the US who believe they've been robbed, and guess what? No riots, no burning cars, no looting, just allowing the process to reveal the truth. Yeah. Which is the greatest swindle in US history. And the moment that Trump is elected, which he will be, I'm certain of that, as I said, then the left will go crazy. Then the coup d'etat will be attempted. And then there will be violence at the leading up to and potentially even including the inauguration. Yeah. But then it'll settle down, and then we can watch the parade of depraved individuals, the deep state, as Trump lines them up, puts them in orange jumpsuits, and the next 4 years will just be this wonderful spectacle of these people being locked up. And I hope there's some splashback in Oz, because the connections between Australia's deep state and the US's deep state is there, and the Australian people will see that too.
I don't think people understand the gravity of this situation. I mean, Joe Biden is not for Brexit. He is not. You know, it was Barack Obama who said, if you guys vote for Brexit, this is in 2015, if you vote for Brexit, I think it was in 2016 actually he said it, you will go to the back of the line.
That's right.
Those are his words. Now, the problem with that is, if we end up in a situation with that, there are similar things in Australia we're gonna have problems with. We don't want that. We really don't want that. The Senate currently is still technically in the air. It's projected that there'll be a Republican win, but we don't know yet. There are 2 seats we're waiting on. I think they happen to be in Georgia, which is obviously holding it up. Now, isn't it suspicious that on election night, Trump was winning pretty much all of these states? There were 5 of these 6 states on election night, overwhelmingly. I mean, Trump had a 700,000, vote lead in Pennsylvania, for example. Yet all of these swing states said, stop the votes, we need to wait.
And it was only the swing states.
Only the swing states.
The hard red and the hard blue states, they got their counts done in time. But where it was critical for Biden to win all of a sudden, and one included even a water leak, and people were demanding the pictures, show us the water. Of course there were none. And the next day, you finished the story.
Well, the next day, it's just, they were like, oh, we found all of these votes. And they just sort of arrived, and we've got signed affidavits. We've got 234 pages for one state of signed affidavits from people saying, a bunch of different allegations, basically. But they've signed affidavits. They're committed to this. All of this will come out in these court hearings that happen. And Donald Trump and his lawyer team, including Rudy Giuliani, who was the former mayor of New York, he actually dismantled the mafia. A lot of people don't know this. They underestimate him. It's going to all come out, and it'll be very entertaining. But there are other irregularities, as Riccardo might say, that we've seen. There are bellwether states, and if you guys don't know what bellwether counties, which are counties that always predict the winner of the election. They're really in tune with who's going to win. There are a bunch of bellwether counties, including in Minnesota, that didn't vote for Biden. They voted for Trump. There are a ton of irregularities which just don't make any sense, Riccardo. Donald Trump got, at this stage, as of counting now, he got 10 million votes more than his 2016 race. How did Joe Biden didn't even go out of the house? He was in the basement. It was a running joke. The guy's in the basement.
And you know what's funny? I was listening to some commentators. I won't mention their names because it's embarrassing. But they still think it's about, well, the people turned against Trump because they didn't like the tweets and he's a bit rough. Oh, please, give me a break.
Far out.
Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. They honestly don't.
Yeah, they care about, rioting and looting in the street. The people that did affect before this year, it was it was stay-at-home mums who were, college educated.
Yeah.
Then the riots happened, and we saw a massive poll boost for the Donald. Why was that? Nothing moved it, but that was the thing.
And Victor Davis Hanson, Emeritus Professor of Classical History and current day commentator on events, he actually said, in California, the bluest of blue states, you can't buy a gun. You know why? For 9 months, because of the waiting list. Because the blue states all of a sudden realised, my goodness me, I love my Second Amendment all of a sudden, because these lunatics are going to destroy us. No, so this is just a con, it's a swindle, it's a lie, it'll come out. It really will.
I can't wait. I am praying for America, and honestly, I'm not even kidding, guys. This isn't a throwaway. I'm using your lines, damn it, Riccardo. What are you doing to me? Far out. Sorry, it kills me. Someone said it to me this week. They said, you're starting to sound like Riccardo. I'm like, crap, really? We don't need two of them. We just need one.
No, one's enough. A little goes a long way.
Yeah, we need a Joel. We need a Joel Jammal. That's what we need. Someone said to me that this week, and I was like, what the hell? But with these states, I've lost my train of thought. With these states, you need to be very careful to put your stocks in. I mean, we've got a confirmation bias, I don't want people to get their hopes up and then Donald Trump loses. If the Republicans hold the Senate, we are looking at a very different presidency from Joe Biden than if Joe Biden has the Senate, the House, and he gets the presidency. Very different presidency. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. But watch this space, guys. Honestly, every night I am praying for the American people. Every night. They are doing a massive protests this Saturday, which is Sunday for us. And it'll be very interesting to see how big that is. But the American people have been holding rallies all over these states, including Arizona, all of these swing states in Georgia, saying we want a fair and free election.
Are these blue protests or red protests?
Red protests.
Okay.
Yeah, the blue protests, they've all gone home. They're all,
What, the money run out did it?
No, they think they've won. It's hubris, Riccardo. It's hubris. It's what we saw in 2016.
Well, get those barrels ready for the Liberal tears. Nothing sweeter.
That's it. Oh, maybe I should do what Ben Shapiro does. He gets his little cup for catching Liberal tears.
That's it.
Watch this space, guys. It'll be very interesting to see how this turns out. If he pulls this off, it'll be a bloody miracle. And on top of that, funny fact, because some of these cases are going to go to the Supreme Court, because obviously if Trump wins them, or if Trump wins or loses them, either way, they're going to escalate it to the Supreme Court. That's what it's come to. These are high stakes. So where do things stand right now? Well, ever since they confirmed Amy Coney Barrett, who is pretty much a conservative Republican, she's an originalist, and we've talked about her excellent record. She was confirmed in these last few months. Excellent lady, brilliant lady. I can't believe the feminists didn't celebrate her. She completely blasted all of the rules that you can't have 7 kids and be a careerist. She completely blows that out of the water. So she's a phenomenal lady. She got confirmed. And now we've got 5 solid conservative originalists on the court. And then we've got a 6th one who is, he likes to be conservative every now and then. I don't even remember his name, that's why. and then you've got 3 progressives on the court. So the situation we find ourselves in right now is this may be escalated to the Supreme Court. It probably will. I'd put a bet on it. I'd probably put a few hundred on that. It's definitely going to happen. It's just about when. 3 of these Supreme Court justices had a part to play in the legal teams for the Bush v. Gore case. Isn't that fascinating? And 2 of them, you're going to love this, were confirmed by Donald Trump. He nominated them.
The hand of God.
Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. Isn't that hilarious? And on top of that, guys, you're going to love this. I mean, how many of us have seen these memes? And maybe I'll chuck it up here. How many of us have seen the memes of the projected vice president elect, Kamala Harris, lambasting Brett Kavanaugh, saying, you are a rapist, you are a this, you are a that, you used to run trains on women and drug them and this and that at parties in college 35 years ago. Here are the images, guys. You can see her lambasting him.
This is the same Kamala Harris who received not one vote endorsing her as a candidate.
Not one delegate.
Not one vote.
Not one.
And we know what the game is. Yep. Get Biden in. Yep. Biden's sick, dies, retires, suicides himself, who knows. And Kamala Harris is now the president.
Oh, no.
Just another marionette.
Guys, can I just say, I want, if Joe Biden wins, I do want him to see his full term out. I don't want to see the guy die. I'll put it that way. He is not as radical as Kamala. Kamala is more progressive than Bernie Sanders. And I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding. If you look at her 2019 voting record in Congress, it's actually, she voted more times than Bernie on progressive legislation. I didn't believe it. And then I looked it up. But she was polling at 9% in her home state of California during the primaries. Not a delegate vote, not one.
No.
And then on top of that, we've got Joe Biden. If you go back a few years ago, we've got Clarence Thomas, who he's the chief of the Supreme Court. He is the head of it because he's the head conservative there. He's the black conservative on the justice. He's the black conservative justice on the court, and he was also lambasted. In fact, he called it a high-tech lynching from Joe Biden when they were throwing all these allegations at him as well.
And you remember the confirmation hearing with him. At one point, he just pushed back and said, "That's it. Confirm me, don't confirm me. I don't care. No job's worth this. So just do it." He just had enough, and yet he's there, which is great.
Well, it was before I was born, so I can't remember, but I will show you guys the images of it. It is quite breathtaking. So if you think that I'd like to think that these originalists are very professional, but I do think they may, if it comes down to a coin toss, they will err on the side of the Donald, just out of spite.
Oh, no, they won't. They wouldn't do it. Their record... Amy Coney Barrett, a lot of them, their record is pristine. They go according to the law, regardless of what personal feelings they have, and that's why they're good justices.
It'd be interesting to see how that goes. So that's the update, guys. That's what's happening. That will most likely change a week from now. I mean, as I said, it's Friday the 13th. Anything can happen today, and Americans are just about to wake up in a few hours. So we'll see what happens. What the Donald's got in store for them. But even if Trump wins or loses, the fight still goes on. It changes nothing, you know. And Riccardo said this a number of times. We can't wait for Trump. Trump won't save Australia. We've got to save ourselves. And it goes for A1 as well. Riccardo will not descend from a cloud and save Australia. He needs good men and women, which we've been seeing, to come, to rise up, to build themselves up, whether you use this book or not, to rise up and build yourself up as a competent individual. We couldn't care. I just think that it does a great job. It helped me. So if you sort of build yourself up and you put your hand up to be a candidate and you let us know it's a winnable area, we can make it happen. Why not? You know, don't put yourself in a box. That's for sure. So this is where we're at with with the results, guys. Just a high level understanding of what's going on. But we'll move on. Don't get disillusioned, but watch this space. I'll give you an update next week. So Riccardo is going to take us through a very interesting strategic intention. And at this point, I will hand the remote over to Riccardo and we'll hear what he's got to say.
Okay, this is, we've been running Zooms, as I said, every night during the week. Last week, Victoria, this week, WA, and we'll continue with all the states. And it's a long talk. And the introduction I give them is Australia One's big picture, because it's important to understand how everyone fits into the master plan, and there is one. Now, let's just kick it off. Whenever you plan a large, complex operation, one of the first things you do is set your intention. Comprises 3 parts: purpose, method, end state. Okay. And if you look on the screen, you'll see that. It says purpose, method, end state. Purpose is what you're going to do. Method is how you're going to do it. The end state is a description of the world once you have finished. It's a series of metrics by which you can indicate, yes, we've achieved our objectives, the war is over, the operation is done, let's go home. And so we've done the same thing. Now, what kicked this off was when my family and I returned back from the Middle East after many, many years in the Middle East, 6 years ago. We knew that Australia had been in bad shape. We'd been monitoring events from Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And we landed at Mascot Airport in Sydney. And it was a shock. It was like landing in the airport of a third world country. It was dirty. The staff were surly and rude. And it got worse from there. And that was just the beginning. And I think I may have mentioned it before. We realised, my God, what's happened to Australia? And by every metric, there were problems. And we've gone through that, so we won't go through it again. And that's why we got into politics. But then we had to sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do and why? So the first thing we sorted out was our purpose. And it's to save Australia. But to save Australia from what is your first question? That's a good question. Well, the Islamists, the communists, the globalists, the psychopaths, the corporations, the pedophiles, the lot. Because these are the real threats that we're facing. So that's the mob that we're going to save Australia from. So what are we going to create? What's our end state? Because you leave method to the end. Don't go to method yet, because people, it's the old saying, if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, that's not what you do. And let me give you an example. Let's say there's a siege hostage situation at Mascot Airport. There's an aircraft, 150 passengers on board, half a dozen terrorists, and you've been told to resolve this situation. Now, what's the end state, do you think? Well, the end state would be all the hostages are alive, the terrorists are neutralised, and the aircraft has received as little damage as possible, because if you get that wrong, you've got a problem. And so the mission isn't to kill the terrorists. The mission, of course, is to rescue the hostages, save the lives of the hostages. That's the mission. And so we had the same approach here. What is our end state? How do we know when we've succeeded? Well, the end state's really quite simple. We wanted to create a country that was moral, sovereign, self-reliant, Christian Western democracy, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. And that's the nation we wanted to build. Why? Because these are the qualities of the nation that we once were, and the most powerful, successful, generous civilizations that have ever been built. And this is, this end state is predicated on hard experience overseas. But it's very clear. This is the prism through which we examine every possible policy question. And policy is always a tension between autonomy and the public good. And so it's always a judgment call. But for example, a sovereign nation. And if anything degrades from that sense of sovereignty, well, it's not in, for example, the United Nations. That's why we want to withdraw from the UN, because it's interfering with our sovereignty. We don't want that. Self-reliant. We in Australia have everything we need to succeed. We don't actually need the rest of the world. We want to engage with the rest of the world, but setting ourselves up with a single point of failure, like successive federal governments have done with China, is just dumb. It's bad business. And so you can go through the list. So this is what we're aiming for. But here's where it's different. And this is why people have to understand this isn't some naked grab for power, because it's not. It's anything but that. This has never been tried before in human history. I've looked very hard for historical precedents in order to inform the way we might approach this particular problem. But there are none. The problem has never been this profound. The adversary has never been so titanic in scope and size and power. It is utterly unique. And so there's only one way to save it. There's only one way to save the country. And this is it. This is the method. We create a moral political party that empowers Australians to reach their highest individual potential so that collectively all can participate in the reformation of Australia. Now let me read that again, because every word is pregnant with meaning. It's very important. This isn't like some business vision that you stick on the wall and everybody ignores. This is key. We are to create a moral political party which empowers Australians to reach their highest individual potential so that collectively all can participate in the reformation of Australia. And this is the method right now, because we have been degraded, and we've discussed this many times, we don't have to go through it again, but the country has been degraded at every level for decade after decade after decade. We've got to the point where people can't tell what's right and wrong anymore. We've got to the point where people need advice on whether killing a baby at full term is legitimate. And then, as we've said before, they're discussing post-birth abortion. You know, it's just insane. Peter Singer, an Australian bioethicist, I think he calls himself, he's a lunatic as far as I'm concerned, and he was awarded by Julia Gillard. This guy believes that, for example, that people shouldn't have personhood until the age of 2. So you've got a Prime Minister of Australia rewarding a lunatic that thinks you can kill babies up until the age of 2 because they haven't achieved personhood. And that's what I mean by not knowing right and wrong anymore. And so that's how degraded we are. Now, by we, I don't mean the people. Your average Australian is well aware what's going on. And I've got to tell you, the A1 family is attracting them like a magnet. They're great. But the organs of state, the polity, the bureaucracy, the judiciary, the constabulary, the military, the media, the universities, academia, the lot, they are so corrupted, that's what's got to be fixed. The people are fine, the people are in great shape, and they know what's wrong. But this is why this is like no other political party ever, like no enterprise begun by anybody ever. It is quite unique. And I'm quite comfortable with that, but that's the intention, and people need to understand that. Now, the second step, what do we do to do that? It's nice to have a good idea, but how do we do it? Now, I'm going to show you a schematic now of the meta process behind what we're doing. So let's go through that. This is called the synchronization matrix. Most people understand that if you have a large complex operation, you break it down into its constituent objectives, and then you sequence them chronologically. You achieve the first, which leads to the second, and so on. And that makes sense. But when it's extremely large and complex, you also have separate lines of operation. Now, let me explain that to you. The landing of the beaches on Normandy, for example, they just didn't lob up one morning and throw the poor bloody infantry onto the beach, because that's just murder. So there was a series of other operations directly impacting that operation, but not involved in it. For example, there would have been spies in Berlin collecting intelligence and passing that back to the Allied headquarters. The French resistance were destroying rolling stock, railway lines, interfering with munitions productions in factories, and this is well before the landing, in order to make it difficult for the Germans to respond with reinforcements once the main effort was identified, because they weren't sure which beach the Allies would land. And then, as we were closer to D-Day proper, paratroops would have been dropped behind enemy lines, securing crossroads, bridges, high ground, in order to facilitate Allied movement and interfere with the German movement. And then finally, we were close to the actual landing, where the naval gunfire support began on the fortifications on the Atlantic Wall, destroying those. And then finally, the infantry were put in the landing craft and delivered to the beach. So you can understand there, you have all of these activities were contributing to the operation, but they had to be synchronized, and they're very, very separate, and we're doing the same thing. So have a look at the screen now. And there are the phases. Phase 1, build a party. Phase 2, win the people. Phase 3, win representation. Phase 4, win the balance of power. Phase 5, win government, and then we continue. Now that makes sense. There's nothing mystical about that. But these separate lines of operations are what we've got rolling. Now, you'll see the first line of operation is politics. That's the obvious. There are 5 additional lines of operation which are all classified. Now, don't be offended if I don't tell you what they are, because not even the executive is aware of all of the 5 lines of operation. Like any good operation, if you need to know, you're briefed in. And if you don't need to know, you're not briefed in. And they're mature and intelligent enough to understand that. So there's the politics. That's contesting seats, handing out how to vote, getting people elected, and all that sort of stuff. Now, it might surprise people. This is the most visible but least critical to our ultimate success. We could actually never get one member of parliament elected over the next 40 years, and we will still achieve our objective. So when people say this is a naked grab for power, it's because they're imbeciles and they couldn't find a beer in a brewery. Seriously, they don't. So this is far more important and far more profound. This is a multi-decade operation with several lines of operation. Now, the other lines of operation which contribute to the success and the achievement of the objective are synchronized carefully with the whole lot. And so everything happens on time and exactly the way it's supposed to. And so the metaphor of the soldiers landing on the beach, that's the election day, that's where people are actually voting. But leading up to that day, a lot of work is being done, very hidden. When the history of A1 is written in 10, 20, 30 years, maybe then the full truth will come out, but not for a long time. It'll eventually come out. And so why is this important? It's important for A1 to understand that there is a large multi-layered plan to combat what has been a multi-decade, multi-layered plan by incredibly sophisticated and dangerous adversaries. And it goes back beyond you can imagine. But this is the only way we can beat them. This is what we must do to make sure. Now, does this have some immediate input? You betcha. Because the next federal election is due no later than May 2022. And I think I might have said it before. I anticipate that Morrison will be going to the polls before the end of next year. So he's going to call it early, and I think it'll be somewhere around the end of 2021. So A1, the A1 family is being briefed that we are going to contest that election, but here's the objective. We will hold the balance of power in the next federal parliament. Just to remind everybody, that's what we're going to do. We're going to hold the balance of power. We're going to win 6 or 7 seats, because that's absolutely doable. We'll be contesting a whole lot more, but we'll be contesting 6 or 7 seats and hold the balance of power. And so when you land on that beach on election day, 2021, that's that red line of operation you can see there. Know that a lot has been done behind the scenes to make sure that you not only storm the beach, that you move forward. And as I've said once before, we're going to Berlin, and we're not going to stop there. We're going to go all the way. We're going to wave at Moscow on the way past and head straight to Beijing. So there you go. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to explain that, because the A1 meetings that we've been having every night, which go for a couple of hours, they love it. They understand, okay, we get an idea that this is something more than we've ever seen before.
And I mean, that's the big thing I want to emphasize with you guys. The biggest, I didn't start a podcast with Riccardo Bosi because it was good for views. I started it because transparency is the new commodity in getting elected. I honestly think that. I think that the problem with what our politicians have been doing for the last few decades is not being transparent with the people. And at this stage in time, the pendulum is swinging very hard in the direction of transparency. We need more transparency. And that goes to the progressive movement. They want to declassify war information, and with the whole anti-war battle that's been going on with Julian Assange and everything. And it goes to what's happening with conservatives. We're very distrustful of the government. We don't like the fact that there's too much that's classified. There's too much which taxpayers don't know about, which they're funding. And it's very, NSA stuff in America, for example, spying on their own people. Very, very troubling stuff. So find me another politician where you have this much access. When you guys ask me a question multiple times, I want you to ask this of Riccardo. It comes up. Last week we asked Riccardo about what did we ask you about? I think it was guns last week. That was one a lot of people wanted to know about. The week before that, I was like, you're a Islamophobe.
Yeah, that's right.
The week before that, you are a Freemason. It's like, find me a politician where you can write that in the comments. You have got a good host, not like the ones on Q&A, the ABC. A good host that will ask it, and maybe it is a little bit of self-aggrandizement, guys, but it's the truth. I am genuinely asking him these questions that are on my mind. I don't hold back.
And what they don't know is Joel doesn't warn me of these questions. He springs them on me.
I don't.
Because he wants that honest, immediate response, the look in the eyes, have I caught him out? And that's the good thing about being honest. I don't have to remember what lies I told, just tell the truth, and away you go. So he's not warning me out. Yeah. He just springs them.
And there's no secret, guys. Donald Trump was once asked, what are you doing to prepare for these debates with Joe Biden before them? And Donald Trump just said, mate, he didn't say mate. That's probably what Riccardo would say. He said, I just battle with the media. to have discussions with them, because every time I have a discussion with them, it is a debate. And so look, I'm sort of, so part of it is intentional on my behalf. I do want to keep you on your toes, Riccardo, but
oh no, I understood that from the first time you did, and I thought, no, this is good. I understand it. I understand that.
Are you still receiving money from the UAE? Do you have Jewish funding sources?
Yeah, that's right.
Are you a plant?
I'm a plant. Yeah. I'm a begonia in a ceramic pot, please.
Dear. They went silent, Riccardo. I am running out of accusations. I've actually run out. I've got nothing left to throw at you. I mean, I threw them all out at you, and then people are now. This is how low they've fallen. They're now criticizing your suit, how well you dress, and I'm like, guys, you want him to underdress? Do you follow politics? You got to wear a suit. But look, if you were at the marches, guys, you would have seen Riccardo in casual clothing. I got some footage from that. He does actually own casual clothing. This has to be done a certain way. Otherwise, it's just two guys talking in a room about politics, having a beer. We're not drinking scotch, by the way, for the 100th time. But that's all right. I like to fool you guys into thinking we can drink that much and gulp it. But it is very important to me, transparency. And if you couldn't answer some of these questions, I would have some serious questions myself. But I do have a question that I didn't ask you about in the past, and this is off the cuff. So I saw someone criticizing you this week, saying that you ran in the Queensland election, but you don't live in Queensland. What's the deal with that? Because it's not legal to do that in a state election.
No, that's a fair question. It's been asked many times. I answered it. We were moving up to Queensland anyway. Son finished his HSC. He did his gap year. We're out of here. COVID kicked in. Couldn't move up. So we were held up. We should have been in Queensland at the beginning of this year.
Yeah,
didn't happen. Had a residence there, so therefore I could legally register to vote, and I had to do it remotely. And I couldn't go up by myself and leave my wife behind, because the MS is currently so bad I have to carry her to the toilet to and from. Sometimes it hits her so quickly she locks up and can't even speak, and so if I left her with the kids, who's going to look after her? And so I physically can't leave her alone. And then there's the problem, if she came up with us, her immune system is so compromised because of the medication she's on. It's called prednisolone. And because MS is the body's immune system attacking the central nervous system, it eats away at the myelin sheath around the nerves, and it's like wearing out or removing the insulation around an electrical cable. If you imagine taking the insulation out from an electrical cable, the signal short circuits, and that's why they can't move.
Oh no!
And that's the actual problem. So the prednisolone, which reduces inflammation, leaves her weak in terms of her immune system. So she's prone to catch any bug at all. So forget COVID. Anything could actually attack her and cause her massive grief. So it was all legal. It was all appropriate. And thanks to the COVID nonsense, we couldn't do it.
With the address that was registered, was that look, if this is someone's private home, I don't want to know.
Yeah, well,
but what was the registered address?
Yeah, that was a private home.
Okay, cool. No worries. Yeah, I don't.
All legitimate, all above board.
Okay, good.
Just now that you mentioned the election, though, Nicklin, the seat in which I ran, the returning officer has been directed to do a full recount.
Why is that?
Good question. I don't know, but they have to do a full recount. It's almost like somebody wasn't happy with the result, and they expected something different. Now, it'd be wrong to say that there was vote fraud. That would be wrong, and I wouldn't suggest that. But there you go.
Interesting.
I didn't do it.
It'd be funny if your votes went down somehow.
Well, actually, what I did do was I looked at the preference flows and going with the how to votes, and people are less likely to stick with the how to votes these days, but let's assume, and it's a fair assumption just to calculate, but I went through the preference flows with the election in the seat of Nicklin, and I would have probably come third with 15.10% of the vote.
Yeah.
That's a bloody good result for a no-name party with a no-name individual who had to run the campaign by remote control. And I tell you what, as I said it before, it's a testimony to the sheer enthusiasm and ability of the A1 team that ran did the heavy lifting physically on the ground, while I did my stuff via the internet.
So if you got in, you would have been in that lower house, in the lower house there, throwing punches.
I would now be a Queensland. Well, there's only one house. It's a unicameral parliament. They don't have an upper house. So I'd be in there and causing massive grief.
Yeah. So one of the big things we sort of were pushing, and we didn't. This is another thing, guys, we didn't discuss. One of the things you were really pushing was saying we've got the Great Reset coming up. It's in January. We need to get in this election so that the world pays attention to what's going on. I think it's safe to say that a senator probably has a bit more heft, as you know, in terms of power over legislation, especially being on a federal level. This week we saw, to her credit, Pauline Hanson challenge the Great Reset, and unfortunately, only 2 senators. The other one being a One Nation senator as well as Pauline, only 2 senators voted to oppose the Great Reset. Now, kudos to Pauline for bringing this up, but even if you got in, not even a senator was taken seriously on this. Where do we go from here? I mean, you can understand why people are disillusioned for the last 40, 50 years, just getting hammered with stuff. We present this solution to them that we can get into Parliament and then the world pays attention. And then a senator does speak up on it, and she does have our best interests in mind, talking against the Great Reset, and they just laugh her out of the courtroom. I mean, out of Parliament. What do we do when we're dealt with cards like that?
The problem with Pauline's, well, there was no problem with Pauline's motion or motion in the upper house in the Senate. The problem is that not one only Malcolm Robinson herself, as I said, voted for it. Everybody else voted against it, which means they're for the Great Reset. End of story. It's as simple as that. You have been warned, ladies and gentlemen of Australia. You have been warned that every party, bar One Nation, in the federal Senate is in favour of the Great Reset. And if you haven't Googled it, Google it, watch it, and be horrified. Now, how do we get around it? If a senator can't do something, what can we do? Well, there's the old Homer Simpson advice, can't win, don't try. No. And this is what I keep saying to A1 people. Our primary objective is to build a party. You can protest if you want to, but that's not going to change anything. Build a party, build a party, build a party. Because if we have a protest and 500 people turn up, we have a problem. If we have a protest, and I'll go up an order of magnitude each time, and 5,000 people turn up, now the cops have got a problem.
Yeah.
Let's go up one more order of magnitude. If we have a protest and 50,000 people turn up, the politicians have now got a problem. Let's do it one last time. If we have a protest and 500,000 people turn up, the politicians are now terrified and we win. Without law on our side, sheer mass, and I'm talking about peaceful, I'm not talking about anything violent, the sheer weight of numbers. We get 5 million people around Australia turning up saying, Scotty and the premiers, you can go to hell. Because we know you're attainted of treason, you shouldn't be there. But you are going to stop, because we will bring the entire nation to a halt. And that's all we need. Don't need everybody, we just need enough. And that's what we need to do. Build a party, build a party, build a party. And just by sheer weight of numbers, because these guys are terrified. They are absolutely terrified. And I tell you, the good policemen and women of New South Wales, if there was a protest and 500,000 people were there, they'd be making sure that we were, we'd wave and smile and say hello, because they're good. They're okay. But I can tell you, good-for-nothing Gladys would realise that she and her government are out of a job. And I'm glad I mentioned that, because Gladys's big deal this week was to change. She was in favour of changing the national anthem. Here's another distraction for everybody. And she wants to change the word from "we are young and free" to "we are one and free." And the front page of the Telegraph had the one in red, which looks surprisingly like Australia won. And I thought, well, thanks for the advertising, good for nothing, Gladys. You're a dope, you're a fool, you're an idiot. Please go home. Stop embarrassing yourself. You're no good for the state, you're no good for the country, you're no good for Armenia, you're no good for anybody. That's why you're good for nothing. You're only being propped up because you are delivering for the people that really run New South Wales. But Gladys, nobody's getting it, nobody cares. You're a joke, we get it. Change the anthem, you serious? Well done. But anyway, The point is we can do it, but build a party, grow, and when the word comes down, we say Australia One, stand up. The entire Australian continent rumbles to the sound of 5 million people saying, that's enough, Scott. Time for you to leave.
Okay. So possibly protest is a big, it's got a big part to play in the coming years.
The right protest, but the best protest is the next federal election.
Yeah.
That's the best protest.
Yeah. And you know what's great? We talked last week about that and the impact that can have, and we talked about once you get into Parliament, holding the balance of power, what you do with it, live streaming the negotiations. And you made the point, I made the point.
Well, I'll give you the job. We'll live stream the negotiations, and you've got the gig, mate.
Why not? It's good to get that one signed up early.
My word's good.
I'll get that in contract later. But I made the point that, Riccardo, they would sooner side with each other than go to another election.
And you're very astute to say that.
And then you said, because we've seen this around the world, and we've seen this in Australia. It happened recently, when one party held the balance of power, the balance, that party ended up actually changing and selling out. But then you said that the two parties would rather side together. That's right. And then the Australian people would clearly know who's for them and who is not for them.
And the way they'd sell it is this is a wartime cabinet. We're working together to save the country.
Yeah.
No, they're working together because Xi Jinping tells both the Liberal and Labor parties to get together and deliver what he wants, which is Australia on a platter.
Yeah.
That's why it's going to happen. It's got nothing to do with Morrison and Albanese. These guys have no more power than...
I do look, I think there's a mix. I think there is a mix. There's a corporate sort of overlords, a lot of them receive Chinese funding that encourage to do this sort of stuff. That's sort of the line of thinking I think you take it down with Xi Jinping. And then I take it down the line of people like Jackie Lambie who've done some great stuff.
Yep.
They just don't know. They just don't know what the Great Reset is. It is not a conspiracy theory. We talked about it a month and a half ago. It's to this date, it's our most successful episode. 300,000 views. 2 weeks later, Sky News cover it. And they get however many views they get. And then after that, Pauline Hanson moves this motion and it gets thrown down. I will say this. One thing that Pauline did do from doing this, which was very productive, is, how you were saying we would then know who's on whose side if you live stream the negotiations or if they sided with each other? She just did that.
She did.
And you didn't win a single electoral seat to do that.
As I said, politics is the most visible and least critical to our ultimate success.
Yep.
I'd love it when a plan comes together, mate.
We were talking about it last week. That's what kills me. It's 5 weeks ago, we set the agenda. We said the Great Reset, it's not a conspiracy theory. I threw what I had at it. We've played videos of the German guy saying, I want more power. We need a Great Reset. And Riccardo made fun of his accent. We set the agenda. The Sky News cover it. Pauline Hanson, I am self-aggrandizing, guys, because it's amazing. It shows you what you can do when you stand up and you say, this is what we need to be looking at. Stop looking at the confetti. There are real things we need to pay attention to. And once you stand up, once you speak the truth, once you cut the bull crap and actually start talking about the things that matter, and you talk using specifics. You're critical, but you use specifics. You chuck a suit on. You look presentable. And then you discuss it, then people pay attention, okay? We can't do what we've done the last 3 decades, which hasn't worked, okay? And this is my criticism for people who I genuinely care about. I genuinely care about the white nationalists. I really do, as fellow Australians, because this is our country we have to share together. What you guys have been doing hasn't been working. You need to get cut through in a better way. There are ideals you guys have which have to go. The skin color stuff is just crap. I mean, we just demonstrated that from our little exercise these last few weeks. 2 ethnics are, fighting for, a sovereign Australia. But the point must be made, you can have an impact, and do not underestimate your power and the power of your vote. They paid attention. Pauline paid attention. She probably could have done more before this election, but she's paying attention now. Was it your seat or was it Tracy's seat where One Nation went down from 20% of the vote last election, primary vote, down to 5%? They lost 15%.
Both. They both suffered badly
God.
across the state. And in fact, we're looking at that, trying to understand the detail, because it's an important lesson. But
I just don't understand it.
But to your point, though, about everybody can do it, they can. I'm just a simple soldier. I'm nothing special.
And I'm a 23-year-old Arab dude.
There you go. There's a lot of talented people out there. Yeah. Throw your hat in the ring and take control of your country, because that's what it's all about. Absolutely. And I'll say it again. Sovereignty comes from each individual, and it doesn't matter whether you're a point piper millionaire or a prostitute from Emerald. You are equal.
That's right.
Utterly equal. And when people start to get that, that's when the page is going to turn.
That's right. So thank you, Pauline. Thank you for your courage. Courage is in short supply. I get it. It's not fun having Green senators, arguing with you and laughing at you. But oh my gosh, thank you, Green senators, because they just wear it on their sleeves. They make it so obvious what they're doing. They're like, we have to face the pandemic. We've got a climate crisis. We need to consolidate all resources and remove private, ownership of everything. It's like, thank you for being so obvious about it. I love it. It's beautiful. It's so easy to attack. It's like AOC's Green New Deal. Get rid of cows. Get rid of, air travel. It's like, yes, she said it. And she got re-elected, which is great. So we've got 2 more years of her saying this stuff. But thank you, Pauline. I really, honestly, I appreciate you. You've made a significant contribution over the years, and you are still doing it. Can you do more? Absolutely. But I mean, my mate who got the highest ATAR, he got the highest ATAR in the HSC. Of course, he could have done more, but credit where credit's due, and that goes for people in all parties, honestly. So it's good you've made it very clear now for the Australian people to see that there are 2 senators that are willing to put their name to that motion that I displayed before. Well done. Let's go to the Labor Party. Joel Fitzgibbon quits amid climate criticism. Apparently, he had a big shouting match in the Labor Party room. So Joel Fitzgibbon, guys, he was on the shadow cabinet, and now he's moved to the backbench because he's had a lot of disagreements with the cabinet there, especially the shadow cabinet, especially Anthony Albanese, who he had who's obviously the leader of the shadow ministry right now. Now, 2019 was a big indictment on, this is one of the big lessons. It was a big indictment on Labor's approach to climate change. It really was. People didn't like the radicalism, it turns out. People liked their jobs. People liked fossil fuels. People liked low energy costs. Now, the Liberal Party, they're a light version of Labor, but they were better, more or less on these issues than Labor. Labor they have become the Greens. That's just the reality. Joel Fitzgibbon's learning this lesson after they did their review on the failings of the Labor Party and pinning it to Bill Shorten. They had a look at this and they said, we need to scale this back. Joel Fitzgibbon was a voice for scaling this back. So it does actually pain me to see Joel lose his position. I think he's very astute, whether he believes these things or not. I think he truly believes in I feel like he's a holdout blue-collar Labor Party. Maybe Mark Latham could be a Mark Latham in a few years. Who knows? It is strange to see him go because he was, honestly, Riccardo, he was honestly arguing anywhere. He would appear on any channel. He'd go on Sky News, wherever he wanted. And he would say, we need a more common sense approach to this. We can't decimate the economy because of this. Maybe we need to start looking to nuclear. Maybe we need to start, we can't just completely cut, fossil fuels entirely. We need to look at jobs. And he's right. Those are my points. He stole my argument points. And that's the funny thing. I couldn't tell if he was me or if he was, or like an Australian Conservative candidate from last year. And so, he was a real, I was actually trying to get him on the show, Riccardo. He seems like a real, if he succeeded, he would have been a real weapon for the party. If the party went down that road, Labor probably could win the next election. But they're just too radical. The progressives are really doubling down, and you can see the battle within that party, which is very fascinating. But what are your thoughts towards that? Because we've talked about party reformation, and it seems like it's a fool's gambit. I agree with that. But I have to admit, when I see people like this, Joel Fitzgibbon's trying honestly to reform the party, perhaps not receiving the support he needs from the constituency with emails supporting him, and telling their own ministers, why aren't you backing him? It does pain me to see this, because it's just like it's bullying. In my view, now he should be able to take it, but at the same time, it just pains me because I know that this is what the people want. What are your thoughts about all that?
This is why the Labor vote in certain seats, those that predominantly rely upon those foundational economic issues, price of electricity, coal mines, steel towns, things like that. That's why the people will vote for anybody. They will never vote Liberal. Right? Your traditional Labor voter will never vote Liberal. And the Labor Party is becoming, in those seats, is becoming increasingly on the nose. They're not interested in voting Labor, but there's nobody else. And we found this at the last federal election, where we were told as the Conservatives to contest the strong Liberal seats, which is insane, because the Liberals were going to do that. And what we found, because we didn't necessarily take their advice, and the seats in which we contested were strong Labor seats, and we picked up a massive swing towards us because the Labor people were happy to vote away from Labor if they had a reasonable alternative.
Wow.
So they would never vote Liberal, and I get that.
Yeah.
The rusted-ons didn't want to vote Liberal, but they were looking for a reasonable alternative. And the fact that Fitzgibbon is now gone is a tragedy for good, solid, traditional Labor values and good, solid, traditional Labor people. That's a bad sign, because it's almost as if the Labor Party is following some agenda regardless of what the people want. So they're not looking after the working men and women of Australia anymore, not at all. Some of the big corrupted unions are no longer looking after the Australian people, and so this is a tragedy for your solid Labor voters. Who the hell are they going to vote for now? Because, as you said, the Labor Party main is green. And the Green are communist, and that's where it's going. They can see the policies are destroying the nation, and they're doing nothing to fight them. They're not providing an alternative, because when the government and the opposition are in lockstep, and there's a term that people should be very afraid of, when they're in lockstep, either the situation is extremely critical or there's some bad things going on. And we know that the COVID thing is a setup. Everyone, the data's there. Yeah. I don't need to repeat it. But this is bad news for Labor and good Labor people and good Labor values. It really is. Because I think you're right. I think Fitzgibbon's a man of integrity. I think he's a solid operator. He has been for many, many years, straight as an arrow. And there's no place, obviously, for a guy like that in the Labor front bench.
Yeah. I say he would have been really dangerous if the party went down that line, because, as you know, I'm actually I'm weakest on Australian politics. I watched what the UK did last year. They were dealt a overwhelming defeat. The Conservatives won an 80-seat majority, 80 more seats than the Labor Party in the UK, an 80-seat safe majority. And there were seats in the UK where Labor hadn't lost in 100 years. 100 years.
Bloody hell.
I know. Actually, that also happened. This is another one of the irregularities, just as a side note with America. There are counties for 100 years that hadn't gone Republican. And this is how I know these bastards are doing something. Just a side note. This is just a side note. But in the UK, just like what you said, you run in seats where Labor they'd never vote Conservative, but they'd consider something in the middle. The Brexit Party did that. They didn't contest. Nigel Farage pulled out in a number of seats, but he stayed in the Labor ones, and he ate away at those vote counts. So the Conservatives swooped in.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of it I think that ensured the Conservative Party won, and that in turn ensured that Brexit got across the line at that point, but they still have to fight their battles. Now, the Labor Party over there, they had been going through a bunch of different issues, and I know I'm telling you guys about this because I know I have. Can you believe I've got 1,000 followers just on Facebook? For my profile, I don't have many followers. I've got 6,000 followers. That's it. And 1,000 of them are from the UK. Isn't that crazy?
Brilliant.
I mean, I'm based in Australia. I've got like 20 Americans, 1,000 UK people, and then the rest are Australians, which makes sense. But a lot of UK people, they like the commentary I do on it. And the thing I found with their analysis, their post-mortem, after their historic defeat, 100-year defeat, what they were looking at was Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labor Party there. People were talking about him the same way we were talking about Bill Shorten. When Bill Shorten becomes Prime Minister, that's what John Anderson told me in a coffee one time. That's how people were talking about Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. They were saying when he becomes Prime Minister. And they were going through a bunch of problems there with radicalism, their green policies. They were also going through a bunch of things with anti-Semitism. I don't know what their problem is with the Jews. Just every time things get bad, they go for the Jews first, poor people. And so that party, what they did was they then moved to the centre. They actually reformed. And the Labor Party are in a very dangerous position in the UK right now. If they had an election today, there's a very good chance Labor could win government. I'm not even kidding.
Is that right?
Keir Starmer is the guy who, he worked a lot with Jeremy Corbyn, but he didn't have he didn't control a lot what happened in the Labor Party before the December election last year in the UK. He is the Labor leader now, and he has pretty much reformed the Labor Party so that it's trying to get rid of the anti-Semitism and the radicalism and hide it, at least. And he is a very likable guy. Just listen to him, guys. I've listened to more parliamentary debates over in the UK, more hours of it than I'm care to admit. But he is... You've got to watch it. You'll see what I mean when I say it's dangerous when you get a guy like Joel Fitzgibbons who's speaking logic in these parties. I say dangerous, why? I do want common sense people in government, but what I don't want is for them to win government and then the radical side of the party, like what's happening with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who's more progressive than Bernie Sanders, them lynching the guy, and then progressives get in because they will never get in on a progressive ticket. That's the worry.
Hence the sheep in wolf's clothing. Exactly. The Fabian Society. That's the way they do it. That's their logo.
Exactly.
They're quite proud of it. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so look, there's your international analysis of that, guys. But this is why I watch overseas politics. Australia's at chapter 2. The UK is at bloody chapter 13, and the US is somewhere in the middle at chapter 8. We watch it so we can predict it. We predict it so that we can have contingency plans. One of the things that we've been alerted to is censorship. That's a big one. So keep an eye on this, guys. You know, look at, as Riccardo said, look at what's happening overseas, but you always have to translate it to what's happening here. Let's come back to Australia. Scott Morrison, Silent Scott, he's really pissed me off this week. And I say, if I wasn't smiling, I'd be crying. I'll tell you why. Because this guy's our leader. Scott Morrison says the National Cabinet will discuss the international border on Friday. Australia is considering a travel bubble with China. Of all the bloody countries, why China? I love China. I love Chinese people. I love Chinese products. But we've just had like half a dozen pandemics come out of that country in the last 20 years. Half a dozen. And H1N1, freaking swine flu. You know, coronavirus. The next, mark my words, the next major virus is going to come out of China. Okay? It's nothing to do with Chinese people. It's just your wet markets, and what's happening in these labs is really disturbing. And I don't know why Scott Morrison is considering this. I mean, just so you guys have some context, because they don't have context. Australia, it's said, I mean, it's promised, we'll see if it happens, it's promised by Scott Morrison that by Christmas we'll have all of the states open to each other in Australia, except Western Australia, because they're holding out. Why on earth would you consider a travel bubble with China? I haven't even heard about, you know, are we going to have one with the USA yet? Are we going to have one with any other, you know, ally country? Canada? The UK? No. China. The hardest hit place. We don't even know how many people died over there because they were hiding the stats. I wish I remembered the stats, but I think 6 or 7 months ago there were stories about the urns that were being ordered to China. Something like 40,000 a day to one city. as an because they use urns, obviously, guys, because they burn the bodies, and they use urns to hold the ashes. 40,000 dead a day? I don't know, guys. We don't know, because there's an iron curtain. What are your thoughts on this, Riccardo? Because I'm going to start swearing soon.
It's consistent in its inconsistency. All of the lockdown rules and everything that's come out of this COVID pandemic has been nonsense. There's been no consistency. We haven't seen the science for starters. But even the science aside and the origin aside, you can't be within 1.5 metres of people. But if you go to Chatswood Station, it's wall-to-wall people without masks. So there's no actual consistency. It's just complete nonsense. The fact that there's a travel bubble with China, I love the way they create these cute words for things. Once again, it's almost like Scotty from marketing is following orders from somebody other than the Australian people. It's as I said, it's consistent in its inconsistency. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to it. And we're supposed to suck it up. But keep going, Scotty. Please, I beg you. You know, Scotty reminds me of somebody with his head in a guillotine. He knows the blade's about to drop, but he's just going on for as long as he can until it does, and hopes that maybe it'll last a bit longer. But he knows he's for the high jump. And it makes no sense. They're not even pretending to be consistent. And the lamestream media don't press him. They don't press him, really.
No,
they pretend to, but it makes no sense. It's because it's China. That's why.
Yeah. Oh my God, the incompetence. The story goes on. So oh my God. So Scotty decided to get, the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison. I'm trying to uphold some element of decorum here. I'm using every fibre in my being to say this. So he just came out with the post yesterday or the day before saying, I just spoke with President-elect Joe Biden to congratulate him on his election. There are no greater friends and no greater allies than Australia and the US. There's a great montage of Barack Obama going around the world and saying, there's no greater country in the world than, and then he'd be like, which country is this? And then he said it for every country he went to. There's some great montages online. That's not my problem with this, guys. My problem is I just spent the first 20 minutes of this show telling you how this thing is still in the air. Even progressives in the UK, Majid Nawaz, the guy he launched the first organisation to reform Muslims, Quilliam. Even he said, my fellow progressives, you need to wait. It's not over yet. The legal process isn't finished. Not a single person has received an electoral college vote. We have to wait till December 14th, as I explained. Yet someone, or just Scotty is just being stupid here, told, yeah, no worries, Scott, just take the call from President-elect Joe Biden. He's not President-elect, he's prospected President-elect. No one's received an electoral college vote yet, not even Trump, okay? December 14th. But that's not the problem. That's not the problem with this, Riccardo. So I'm just going to say it. Scott Morrison, do you realise that Joe Biden, by contacting you, according to his own standard, is violating the Logan Act? Now, my viewers have no idea what the hell that is. I don't blame you guys. Let me explain it. So when Donald Trump won in 2016, there were meetings in the White House, once he won, to work out what they were going to do to spy on his incoming administration. One of the people Donald Trump appointed when he was getting ready to enter the White House was General Michael Flynn. Now, Michael Flynn was, naturally, he was going to be dealing with a lot of foreign leaders, and he was talking to his prospective people. He ended up talking to a few leaders overseas. And which is totally normal practice. You need to do that so you can hit the ground running when the show starts on Inauguration Day, January 20th, when they bring the new administration in. Well, in a meeting, and we know this from the Obamagate situation that's happening, which the Durham investigation is showing, during the time when the Obama administration were in their last month or so, they had a big meeting with the intelligence agencies, and they were sitting down and they were talking about what they can do to spy and to unmask General Flynn. One of the things that Joe Biden suggested, and this is in their notes, it says, Joe Biden, the Logan Act. They wanted to use the Logan Act, which is an ancient, it's like 100 plus years old, this ancient piece of, motion that was moved or legislation that was moved, so that they could unmask General Flynn. Because you're not allowed to interact with foreign leaders, basically, on behalf of America, to say that you're representing America. Well, Joe Biden, why, by your own standard, you just violated the Logan Act. You talked to Bojo, you talked to ScoMo, you talked to Emmanuel Macron, and however many other world leaders. Yet here we stand, by your own standard, you violated the Logan Act. Are you going to jail? I don't think so. I don't think it's a problem. I think the Logan Act is an ancient thing. I don't think it matters. But the point must be made, you completely, both of you are idiots. How did no one pull you up on this, Scott? You can see why I'm frustrated. Please pick this up, Riccardo. Smouldering ruin.
I don't know. I think it's fantastic, because I think the globalists have just outed themselves. They really have. By picking up the phone, they breached protocol. They know that. But I think their hands might have been forced just to reveal to the world that they've outed themselves as globalists. Because I picked Boris Johnson as he's a shill. He's no friend of anybody other than the globalists. And I picked that because, as we may have mentioned it before about the mayor being the mayor of London is a test for you. I've mentioned that. And so the moment he got the gig, I realised what was going on, and he's been passing a terrible bunch of laws there. But the fact that he spoke to Boris Johnson and Scott Morrison and others, they've outed themselves as globalists. So thanks, Scotty. If we wanted confirmation, that was it. God. Brilliant.
I still think he's an idiot.
Oh, well, that's a prerequisite to be a politician in a mainstream party.
Two can be true at once, right?
Absolutely, because they don't want strong-willed, independent, moral people, because you can't control them.
They want
the danger.
Obedience.
Just
like for each of us.
That's it.
Yeah. Jesus. Progressives, honestly, and this is before we touch on our last topic, progressives, seriously, I was trying to convince you, not that I've got 20 American viewers, I'm not convincing anyone. I was trying to convince you, Trump is a bull. You're meant to let him finish the establishment off. You weren't meant to. Joe Biden, they've really got me started now, because I follow American politics predominantly. I was a Bernie Sanders voter. I'm not an American, but I followed it, heart and soul. Mid-2017, I changed my mind. But I understood the ideals that the progressives were fighting for. Medicare for all, get rid of the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Donald Trump agreed with that too, by the way. Reduce the military-industrial complex, reduce the power of intelligence agencies, restore freedom to Julian Assange. The rich aren't paying their fair share of taxes. The corporate Democrats, including Joe Biden, including Obama, they bailed out Wall Street. That was why we had all of the Occupy Wall Street things that happened during the Obama era in 2011. We had the massive incarceration of black people due to Joe Biden writing the 1984, the 1986, the 1988, the 1994 crime bills, which led to the mass incarceration of black people. We also had them building cages on the southern border so that they could also separate women and children from their parents, Hispanic women and children. Do I need to keep going on? All of these points, Joe Biden has managed to convince the progressives. Ignore all of that. Orange man bad. Vote for me. The progressives completely went against what their ideals were. And it's brilliant. Oh, and the last one was wars. How could you forget about that one? All of the good work Donald Trump's done in the Middle East, mark my words, if these lawsuits don't come through, and I've obviously considered this, any good operator would think about these issues. If Donald Trump doesn't come through, mark my bloody words, he is going to bomb Syria again. Obama dropped so many bombs on Syria, he ran out of bombs. Biggest military budget in the world, he ran out of bombs. Great. I'm still waiting for my reparations for that, by the way, because I'm Syrian. I just can't believe progressives. Seriously, I know I'm ranting now. Progressives, what happened in 2016? Let's be very clear about this. The bull was released into the China shop. It was thrashing around. The elites with their champagne were like, "Oh no, watch out! He's going to come and get us." and he was demolishing it. And what did you do? You interrupted him midway and said, no, you get out. You helped Joe Biden direct this bull out of the China shop before he managed to board up the windows, before he managed to get rid of the establishment. Now we're in a situation where the establishment, if this happens, if Joe Biden gets in, they're going to board up the windows, they're going to double the guard, they're going to throw you guys out too. They're already doing it. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, they didn't get cabinet positions. That's right. You've lost. The corporate Democrats have re-seized the ivory tower. So now you guys have gone completely against my advice, and now you're in a situation where the Donald Trump presidency, where he was going to finish the establishment off, and 2024 could have been a situation where it could have been a true progressive versus a true conservative, and that's not Donald Trump. That would have been in a battle of ideas. We could have had a Tulsi Gabbard as a progressive, and who was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, and we could have had her run against Dan Crenshaw. And that wouldn't have been like the shit show that we've seen these last few years. That would have been a genuine battle of ideas. America, you want to talk about healing and unity? That would have been phenomenal. I talked with John Anderson a year ago about this. I said, that's what needs to happen. Donald Trump needs to finish them off. And the establishment needs to be cleared out. But no, the progressives were like, no, orange mad bad. I can't look ahead more than a year. I can't look to 2024. Establishment bad. So look, that's my. Am I wrong in my analysis? I don't know. That's what I think should have happened. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Your analysis is predicated on the belief that the progressives believe in an ideal, and that the electoral system and the political process is reasonably straight. I disagree on both. It's not. The progressives will fight for whatever they're told to fight for. They don't actually believe in anything. The corporate Democrats are the most corrupt organisation in the United States without a shadow of a doubt. And so that's what gets up. It's the same here. And that's why Fitzgibbon had to quit. They're not interested in a battle of ideas. They want to win at all costs, but they don't even know what they're working for. See, the heavy lifters in the Democratic Party and the progressives, they're the useful idiots that Stalin referred to. They'll use them up and spit them out. Yeah. Because what they really want is to control America. They're not interested in anything else. They're not interested in policy debates. They're not interested. You're never going to have that. Yeah. That's the reason that someone like Trump is the only one that could work, because both those two parties, just like in Australia, they're all controlled by the same people, and they're not interested in delivering for the Australian people. They're not. It is a grotesque lie. They are not interested in the slightest. There might be some true believers down there, but nobody survives the machine. Nobody. Look at Australia, look at the United States, look at the United Kingdom. You don't get up unless you're bent, or you're manageable, or you can be persuaded. Nobody survives the machine, and that's why we built 8-1. Because even the Conservatives, nobody survives the machine. I think it's unwise to assume that policy matters. I think it's unwise to assume in the major parties. I think it's unwise to assume that they believe in you, they trust you, they want you to have power. They don't. They absolutely don't. The Republicans don't, and the Democrats don't. The Republicans have taken a knee to Trump because he's the only chance of them getting them back into power. But most of those guys are just as crooked. Romney, Lindsey Graham. Just list all the rhinos, and they're all rhinos. And I could see it back when, what was his name? Paul. He was the
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan.
He is a piece of work.
Well, Paul Ryan, when Paul Ryan was touted as a vice presidential candidate, and we're going back a few years now, and they described him as a policy wonk, and I went, here we go, this guy's bent. And then he was told to take the Speaker of the House position, and he resisted because he knew exactly what was going to happen, and in my opinion, it was time to pay the piper. He'd been set up all the way along, and now it's time to deliver for his real paymasters, and he was terrified. And he eventually relented, took the position, and so you've got these paid hacks that pretend to be something they're not, and they're in both parties, Liberal, Labor, They're in the Democrats and the Republicans. And that's why Trump's had so much difficulty in the US. And that's why nobody in Australia gets through. Nobody. Not suggesting everybody who gets into politics is bent, but by the time they're finished, they're either broken, bent, or they're just taking the money. And there's countless examples of that. And so the system is so utterly broken and so utterly corrupted that to give any reasonable analysis, it's never going to happen. You just can't. It is more loathsome. It is more disgusting than people can possibly imagine. It really is. The level of depravity which goes on to get things done, and they plan ahead. See, the dills at the bottom, the useful idiots on both parties. And it's not an insult. It's just you're being used. They think there's good things happening, but what they don't realise, they're being set up. And I'll give you an example here. The Defence Enhancement Bill, allegedly, there's no problem with it. It's just to help. Really? Okay. Well, as we mentioned last week, Craig Kelly let the cat out of the bag by mentioning Defence Force aid to civil power, and not just Defence Force aid to civil community. We won't go through that definition again. I received a phone call today from an old mate, and I won't give. I'll just shorten the details so he can't be pinned down. But he lives in Queensland, and he rang up and said, "I've been asked to go back into the military. They're recruiting. Apparently, they're recruiting nationwide. They're calling up everybody to sign up again." And I said, "Well, good on you, mate. Good on you, mate. Are you going to do it?" He said, "No." But as a bit of a joke, I said, I'd like to be in the SAS. I'd like to be Special Forces. And they went, "Yeah, okay, no worries." This guy served for a few years, a long time ago, and has been out for at least 25 years. Now, you do the maths on his age.
Is he 50?
Why are they recruiting former defence members? God. And I pondered this for a while, and I didn't come up with an answer. Somebody else is a little more canny than me, because I'm thinking, okay, there could be legitimate reasons why, and this is happening Australia-wide. They're calling up a whole bunch of people. It didn't make sense. So why are they calling people up? I thought, okay, let's do the obvious thing. They're preparing for a legitimate contingency which requires an increase in defence personnel. Now, there's a cap on how many defence personnel the military can have, Army, Navy and Air Force. There's a limit. They just can't keep recruiting. But reserves is different, and they're calling up all these people to sit in the reserves, and then they've recently changed with that enhancement bill how they can get the reserves in. So they get to go above their authorised establishment, just like that, by calling in the reserves if there's an emergency declared. They also built in this faster process where the Minister of Defence can go straight to the Governor-General and get it done, as long as he has the Prime Minister's okay. Okay, maybe. So it's all suspicious, right? So they're recalling ancient soldiers with groaning bodies to sign up again. And I thought, why? Legitimate operation? Not really. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. Because forward planning identifies potential crises, and then you start your recruiting well in advance, because there's a lead time to get this done. Recruit training, initial employment training, and then getting up to speed with their particular unit. And you'd think about that and you build it in. It's called the operational, getting from a minimum level of capability to an operational level of capability, and it varies. Some are within 4 hours, for example, or a month, 2 years. But that didn't work. It didn't work for me. And then I thought, are they getting more people to get them on the street for this COVID nonsense? And that's a plausible explanation, because they want more troops on the ground to make Australians believe it's normal to have soldiers on the streets, which it should be. And then I was advised, no, you missed the point, mate, I was told. And I thought, okay, enlighten me. They are getting potential recruits back into the military. And I said, recruits for what? Recruits from a rebellion against the government. Who's the biggest threat? You sit right back. Who's a threat to you? Trained soldiers who are strong-willed, independent, and well-trained. So let's reduce the pool from which extreme right-wing groups could recruit. Does that make sense? And I said, that can't be it. That can't be it. And then I thought about it more and more and more. And then I went to the US, and it's exactly what the US would do, what the progressives in the US would do. Because the reason that the progressives can't make any headway in the US is because there's a massively heavily armed portion of the United States population that would say, no, you don't. Second Amendment, you can't touch me, don't do it. And so they've almost picked up a policy from the US and said to Australia, look, you better recruit all these guys, get them back in uniform so they are compelled to follow orders, and they're out of the pool of possible recruits for right-wing extreme groups or even just support people like me. And A1, reduce it, you can't get involved. Either way, and I wouldn't put money on any of those possibilities yet because I haven't seen enough detail. But something stinks. Something very, very wrong is going on. And if I get some more intel on what's going on, I'll let you know. But at this stage, something is not adding up because they're putting pieces of the jigsaw together and the picture is not an attractive one. It's a bit like that 2016 legislation that allows WA police to strip your children naked and forcibly inject them with the vaccine. Why did that pop up? There was no reason. They were just preparing for 2020. Jeez. So don't think that they don't look ahead. They do. Oh, they do. The useful idiots down the bottom have got no idea. They just follow orders blindly. The people up here running the show, pulling the strings, holding the marionette, they know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, and there's something's not right. Something stinks very, very badly.
The speed that things are deteriorating, it does seem exponential. And there are a lot of worried people.
And they should be. They should be worried.
Yeah.
I get that call all the time. What do we do? What do we do? I get it all the time. And it's always the same. Sign up at australiaoneparty.com, get your working with children's check, contact your state coordinator, start banding together and recruit, build the army.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that's going to stop this before the next election and then leading up to the election is to have one party that actually has your best interest at heart, that actually wants to return sovereignty to you.
Yeah. I was really shocked this week, guys, I'll be honest. I wasn't affected. My heart wasn't broken. I was just shocked at some of the comments made at Riccardo and myself this week. They're saying, you are doing this to enrich yourself. You are doing this to...
You're kidding me, really?
I'm not even kidding.
Oh, here's one I heard that this was a criticism. Anybody can start their own party. Why don't you join, X party? Anyone can start your own party. Really?
Good luck.
Really?
Good luck.
Right, mate? You know who I'm talking about. Go do it. Go try.
I want you to
get one person to follow you, just one, and give me a call when you get your first volunteer that will drive 1,200 kilometres to help in a particular electorate.
Can't be related.
With their entire family, and they have children with special needs. You give me a call when you get one. Oh, I'm about to launch into Colonel mode shortly.
I believe.
Enrich myself. This has cost us everything. This has cost us everything. I'll tell you what, to those cowards out there that hide behind keyboards, give Joel a call and I'll meet you face to face and repeat what you want to say. If you're a man, because you're not, you're a little coward with a pin dick. So I'll tell you what, you call Joel, make an appointment, I'll be there, and you tell me to my face what you think. And I'll bet you'll get nothing, Joel. You know why? Because these guys aren't what they pretend to be. They're nothing.
They're not.
They are cowards, and they are weasels, and they're scum. Every last one of them.
And that's why I don't take it seriously, guys, and that's why I don't take it to heart. I'm just shocked because I'm just like, you guys seriously are lobbying that. Go look this up.
This is why, hang on, just go back.
Yeah, go for it.
These guys, you were talking about resilience and people committing suicide and young kids because of social media.
Yeah.
Christ. The lack of physicality in the world in which you live makes you think that you're bigger and better than you are. You really do. And you are profoundly weak, and I feel sorry for you. I really do. You've never met a real challenge. You've never actually gone toe-to-toe. You've never actually risked anything. Easy to hit a keyboard, easy to hit enter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, look, I've got 15,000 followers. Let me tell you something. Twitter's not real. Makes you feel good, but it's not real. So you take your little girly magazine to bed each night because that's all you can manage. Or give Joel a call. Please give Joel a call, send a message, and I'll be there. And you can tell me to my face what you think. Otherwise, you're just another loser. You'll die a miserable death, unknown, unloved, and having achieved nothing with this brilliant gift called life.
Yeah. It truly is brilliant, guys. I mean, there's so much you could do with this life. There's so many people you could help.
My God.
If you only just...
Don't worry about them. Let it go.
Oh, yeah. I let it go. It's just, it is tragic, guys, because it's like, it's a lost opportunity. You're not living up to your full potential. That's it. It's out of love. I feel sorry for you guys because it's what you could be doing. Listen to Jordan Peterson. Don't forget about this book for a second. Listen to Jordan Peterson. It's the same stuff. This is just from a military angle. Listen to him. He will tell you you're not living up to your full potential. This is what you need to do. Get your shit together as an individual. Follow the 12 rules for life. It's like the 10 commandments. And from there, you will turn your life around. You'll make your life better. You'll make those around you, your family's lives better. You'll make your community's life better. Isn't that great?
No, they don't care about it. They're at the first level of development.
Yeah.
They have the psychological profile of a child up to about the age of maybe 3 or 4, where they have just begun to individuate from mum and dad, and they say, they're trying to develop who they are. And normally the children will transcend, with good parenting, will transcend that period of psychological development where they start to individuate, and it's measured by things like they understand that if there's a hat, but then you cover up the hat's still there. So it's not what you see. They have this capacity. They say there are real measures by which you can assess a child's psychological development, and this individuation process is part of it. But then once you're looking after yourself and you become very self-aware, very selfish, in a sense that you meet your needs. Logical position, not a problem. But then most people actually transition beyond that into a realm of where they are responsible for others. So an older brother or sister would learn that I must sacrifice for the one behind me because they're not as tall, strong, smart, whatever it might be. And so they learn selflessness. But we have this extended childhood where self-gratification is the only need that is met, instead of this transitioning, and that's only step 2 where you look for somebody else. Because as we said, step 3 is we start to live for an ideal, and you're willing to risk everything for an ideal, and that's tough to jump from, because it's easy to be selfless for another person, but when you're selfless, you're ready to die or kill for an ideal, then you're in a whole new realm, and there's a level beyond that. But these people are still back here, where they're living for themselves. And that's all they know, and they gratify themselves, and it's hollow, it's empty life. Yeah. And they haven't grown up. And so we've got this extended adulthood that goes into 35. I knew this lawyer, 35 years of age, still living with his mother. I couldn't wait to get out of home. And I had a great home, but I just couldn't wait to take on the world.
The adventure.
17 years and 10 months I was out of there. I was in the army. My folks had to sign the document because I wasn't 18 yet. 17 years and 10 months. And I couldn't wait to take on this huge adventure called life and really make something of my life.
Yeah. I know.
Oh,
I know.
Please.
I know. It's
please. Oh, my God. And here's the funny thing. My first, we got to the Royal Military College, and we got our first leave, I think, after something like 5 weeks or a couple of months, whatever it was. You weren't allowed out. And we went straight back home, and we spoke to all our friends, and then we came back to the college, and to a man, we said, what was it like seeing your old mates? And we all said, God, they're children. They're so stupid. They're so underdeveloped. They're so...
Yeah.
And we couldn't believe it because we'd done so much in that short initial period of training in the military that we looked at our school friends with sadness and just thought, my God, and then we'd go back at the end of the year and they hadn't grown up. See, our growth curve, our physical, emotional, mental, psychological growth curve was like a vertical cliff with an overhang.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And they hadn't. And these guys...
That's why I feel sorry for them. You're missing out. And on top of that, the most enjoyable thing in life you will have is creating that of a family with a loving partner. How the F are you going to attract a loving partner if you're still down here and she's developed
partner in the girly magazine? That's the best they'll ever
They've substituted that.
Absolutely. That's what they'll end up with.
But again...
53 years of age, alone, with a stack of magazines and a bottle of tequila. That's their future. I wish you well, I really do.
Yeah.
But once again, send Joel the message, I'll be there by myself. I don't need anybody else, I'm fine. You can bring all the mates you want.
I'll take bets, guys. I'll take bets for it. it'll be good fun. I won't live stream it, but I'll let you know the result.
Did I tell you about the mutiny I faced down?
No.
I told you the story. All the company of black soldiers, I'm the only white meat in town, and they all stood up as one ready to take me out. I didn't tell you that story?
No.
Another time.
Another time? Are you sure?
Oh, yeah. I said to them,
yeah.
one at a time or all at once, either way, you go.
Yeah.
But here's the trick. Within 10 minutes, I had the meeting out of my hand, and I worked them so hard that afternoon in the hot PNG sun.
Oh, jeez.
So it's one thing to stare down a mutiny. It's another to turn it around and have them singing my praises by the end of it.
Yeah.
Do that. Do that and come and see me.
Yeah.
You'll be good.
I got a different strategy. I go for the biggest guy, and the smaller guys fall in line. But I haven't had to do that for a while.
Oh man, you know what? The Australian population, the guys like that, you don't worry about them. The good people, the average Australian, decent, hardworking, just great people. They really are.
Absolutely. I do want to clarify one thing, guys. In last week's video, I made a request for funds for the show so that, we can keep the lights on. I got a family to feed, believe it or not. My dad passed away 2 months ago, actually a month and a bit ago. We just had his 40-day mass on the weekend. So when I ask for funds, it's not so I can buy a Lamborghini, okay? It's so that I can actually put food on the table and pay the bills for the house. And for my time for editing these videos and putting them out, it actually takes quite a bit of time, believe it or not. And anyone that knows how to do that will understand what I'm saying. So when I say that, I wasn't saying last week that we're the only show you can get information from. I actually, you know what I did? It was really funny. I clipped it so it seemed like I was talking about this show being having a monopoly on all good information. The context you miss, and it's hilarious because the media do this to people all the time, but I did it to myself this time. The funny thing was, I was talking about alternative media. It's the new way information's going. The mainstream media is dying, so you need to support alternative media, and we just happen to be a show on it. I'm not saying we're the only alternative media show that has a monopoly. I'm saying that we are part of a conglomerate, and the mainstream media is going down. That's why they're so bad.
I wouldn't worry about the complaints, because the feedback I get from the A1 listeners is they love the show.
Yeah, overwhelmingly.
They love the show. They can't get enough.
And the numbers bear that out. I mean, after I switch this camera off, I'm going to be showing Riccardo some of the numbers. We just crossed 1.2 million views in 10 episodes.
They're good numbers.
It's phenomenal. I mean, if you look at the curve, guys, it's looking really, really good. I mean, last week, normally it takes 3 weeks to crack 200,000 views on an episode. We cracked that in 6 days from last week's episode. So I'm really excited where this is going. Even though we've been censored on all of the podcasting services, I'm still working through this with Anchor. I'm very distrustful of them right now because I haven't heard back from them. I've sent them 2 emails. And we're also diversifying to Parler and a bunch of these other organizations. I want to do that more, but it goes back to funding, guys. I need the time to do it. And if I know I've got the funds there that I can pay the bills, I don't have to worry about searching all this stuff. So we're going to Parler. We're going to be doing a bunch more videos on Twitter and a bunch of the other channels as well. But it's going really well. And I want to thank everyone that's been supporting and really importantly sharing these videos, because that's what makes a difference. But Riccardo, did you have any closing thoughts for this long segment?
No, it's a trip. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, adventure.
You can either watch a movie or be the movie, and this is just the best fun. This is the best fun ever. It's hard work. It's gratifying. It's achieving something. It's of value. It's important. Yeah. Watch a movie or be the movie.
Exactly.
It's your call.
And you once said to me, I don't want to embarrass you, but you once said to me that you wrote the book, now you've got to live the book. And it's just like,
that's exactly right. I've got to live the book, and it's cool.
Yeah, that's it. All right, guys. Well, if you want an insight into what he's thinking, read the book, because he doesn't stop citing the damn thing. But it's got some true wisdom in there, and there's some real greats like Jordan Peterson and Dennis Prager, who have some great thoughts in there. But no, thanks, Riccardo. Another great week. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, mate.